What to get started now?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's the RDI. Do you the handout three or handout 1-1?
This one.
One dash one is just a little shorty.
In this
Oh,
one.
in that one.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm looking at one from last
Yeah,
time.
so it says focus area 1, key concept appropriate for beginning teachers. And I don't remember if I ranked this one once or two. But I picked one with the food kit, so.
Okay.
So we need to develop a general working definition of what a beginning teacher is.
I really like the idea of moving the language past beginning teachers and moving towards credential candidates. Because to me, my feeling is a beginning teacher is a person who's going through induction and is a teacher on record. To me, that definition is a beginning teacher. And before that, you're a candidate for your credential. Even interns are still credential candidate. Like they're the teacher on record for interns, however, they don't have a credential. So I think we should shift the language from beginning teacher to credential candidate so that it differentiates. Induction is beginning teacher and TPEs or TPA would be for credential
I
candidates.
100% agree with that
Mhm.
distinction because it's a cause of a lot
It is.
of confusion.
It is.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, it's just that we have all this stuff that we're supposed to be writing down our discussions with. Devin, are you typing them out or should we? Because this is already great stuff and before we start rolling now, and then should we be putting it up on our?
I usually type for my own memory.
Okay.
But I mean, if
you
want me to type something out, I can.
Yeah.
I can just.
That's great. I just want to make sure that we had a
Someone
way to keep
do that.
a record of what we were doing. Fantastic.
Yes. And I agree with you because that was one of the first questions I had during our last meeting was what is a beginning teacher? And so, yeah, I think it clears the blurry lines.
Yeah, once you have your credential, then you are a beginning teacher.
Yes.
That's my
I
feeling
think
about
that's
it.
also like in the old days, I guess they don't have this anymore,
Right.
but that was beginning teacher support, yeah.
Teacher support and
Yeah.
assessment, right? Yeah, that
So,
was very.
yeah, that was
right,
a very-
yeah.
Issue.
Yeah, that was definitely a division between what a candidate and a
Right.
teacher was.
And as a credential candidate, you don't know all these things yet because you're not a teacher yet. So to be held to the same standard as an actual classroom teacher gets really fuzzy and convoluted.
It becomes a real issue
Mhm.
when you're dealing with like sort of a large span of experience too.
Yes.
So when you have like the triad of the resident teacher, the
Mhm.
credential candidate, and the university, and you're saying things like beginning teacher, they're coming from different generations
Correct.
of like induction.
Mhm.
And so when they say
Mhm.
beginning teacher,
Mhm.
it means something different. And
Yes.
so I think making that distinction is really important.
And you could have been a teacher prior to earning your credential.
Yes.
That's what you're saying, right? Yeah, you have different experience levels.
Exactly.
My only concern there would be just the layers of the variation of teachers. So it's like credential candidate. I mean, some of them can also be beginning teachers because they're
But they
teaching.
don't have a
full-time.
they're not
Yeah,
the
If they're in
teacher
this
on record
position,
yet.
it means that they don't have their
I
credential.
understand that, but they're still teaching in the classroom, like full-time.
Right, but
planning
we hold
lessons.
them to the same standard when they don't have a credential yet.
And you're talking specifically about like intern teachers, correct?
No. I'm talking about like whether they're on an emergency credential, whether they're in the intern program, whether they're maybe a CTE teacher that's coming into the profession.
How would that distinguish
There's
like a credential candidate who's doing student teaching in the
Yes.
classroom?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's where I have a hard time thinking about, like, I think we think TPA is done. You go through a teacher program and then at the end of the teacher program, you do the TPA. But there are some full-time teachers right now that haven't done their TPA, but they are teaching full-time.
So for
But they
the
don't-
purpose of this assessment, it's a credential candidate, right? So, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, for the TPA,
Right.
for the TPA itself, yeah.
So for the purpose of this, they're only concerned with like, this is in order to get your credential, right?
Yeah.
Right, so the idea is not like whether you're actually teaching or not is not the issue, the end goal is the credential, right?
And by giving them two different definitions, then we can distinctly say a beginning teacher is a person who is the teacher on record and holds a credential.
Right.
And a credential candidate could be a teacher in a
Exactly.
classroom,
So you-
but has not passed the Ed TPA and does not have a clear
Right.
credential in California.
So you can be a beginning teacher and a credential candidate, but you, right, yeah.
Yes, yeah.
But you said,
Does that make sense?
but you said clear. Clear is not gonna happen
Sorry,
for a while.
not- sorry,
You said preliminary, right?
Preliminary credential. You have passed the TPA.
Yep.
And you have a credential in order to teach in California.
So would that be our attribute one, but then we're
I
supposed to
think
do?
that would be part of general working definition.
Okay.
So the general definition just includes
General definition,
what, a
okay.
credential candidate? Is that
Mhm.
just it itself? And what else? What?
And,
But then we're,
but do we also need to put the language in there of like what we were just saying, like credential candidate
Yes, I think so.
is whatever
Mhm.
we had said, yeah, okay.
How do we put that?
Good question.
I know we said-
We said it for like the past 5 minutes, but how do we say it again? All right.
So, well, I think the thing is that we need to assert that. Okay, the first point is that we want to assert a language change. So a language change, so that basically we want to make sure that there's, I would almost say like that's appropriate for credential candidates.
Yes, I
So
agree, yeah.
like,
Mhm.
and to think about in terms of policy, if that's possible to even change the language in this. So
Yes.
I would like to see appropriate
Let's
for
do that.
credential candidates. So if not, then I would like to see the general working definition, not in terms of attributes necessarily, because I think that's probably not enough.
Yeah.
But I would like to see that as attribute one, like that a
Definition
beginning teacher
of-
is.
yeah.
The clear delineation between. Teacher
For
and-
the purpose of the TPA, the definition of a beginning teacher is but I just feel like they should just change it to credential.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for the general working definition, we all agree that it should be changed from this appropriate for beginning teachers to appropriate to credential candidates?
Yeah.
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 Is that-
well, I mean,
Yeah,
Still on the fence.
that's why I wanted to bring it up, because I felt like you were still, yeah.
because it's here, right? It's like working definition appropriate for beginning teachers, so they have it there for a specific reason. And so I understand the proposal to change the whole thing, and I'm okay with that.
Mhm.
I just think that there has to be recognition that folks are still teaching them, like they're
Yeah, and I think,
still within, and that's why I'm like, I don't know about taking it away completely. Because even pre-service teachers, I would say, are teachers, like they're lesson planning, they're taking over the classroom.
Right,
So
right.
so what I would ask, no, I'm just trying to get clarification of what you're saying. So what is a beginning teacher? Where do we define beginning? Is that 1 year in the classroom experience? Is that a semester? Is that 2 years? Is that just being in the classroom without whether you have a preliminary or not? I mean, just so we are
Yeah.
clear, so I can understand kind
Yeah,
of.
because I feel like there's this whole thing where it's like, then they become a candidate, a credential candidate, but it's like, and they're still beginning teachers. Because they're still developing their ability to lesson plan, to organize, right, to interact with students. But I don't feel comfortable just taking it off completely. I'm just saying
I
like,
was doing that 10 years into my teaching.
Are you suggesting that you want to hold interns and folks who are already teaching to a higher standard on the Ed TPA than you want to hold credential candidates? Is that what you're suggesting?
no, what I'm saying is, I agree with
For the
the,
purpose of the Ed TPA.
yeah.
yeah, for sure, but I'm
So you're
saying,
saying that if they're already in the classroom and they're in an internship program, or if they're doing one of those types of programs where they're like in the classroom, you're gonna hold them to a higher standard than someone who's in a credential program through a university?
no, I don't know why they would if they're both doing the TPA.
That's what you're saying.
Yeah, and I understand that. I just don't want to take away the beginning teacher in the way that they.
So it's not a philosophical question. It's a
No.
question about this assessment.
Yeah.
So we're saying that like supervisors are coming in and folks are coming in and they are scoring folks based on like, oh, you all should be here. Like, if you could look at me just for a second,
Yeah.
you all should be here because beginning teachers are here, but there are people down here because they're not in the classroom as teachers. So your people that you're talking about are, and then there are all these people here and they're not passing.
Yeah.
And so if you say, look, like, we're actually talking about credential candidates, like, that's the standard.
Yeah.
Even though some folks are having a much more enriched, like, immersed experience, like, that's really what we're talking about, like.
Yeah, in addition to that, it's a sense of leveling the playing field, because if you look at the TPAs as a whole,
Yeah.
they're supposed to be designed for a beginning teacher.
Right.
But the pushback is, well, is it really? That's the
Yeah,
next
right,
question. Is it
yeah.
really? And then you have to say, okay, well,
Right.
at what point do you not become a beginning teacher? At what
Mhm.
point are you
Right.
still working? I mean, so it's,
Mhm.
yeah,
Mhm.
I get it. I kind of understand. I'm just
Yeah.
trying to understand your
Yeah.
discomfort with it.
No, my only discomfort is the negation of them as the fact that it's not that, right? It's not that anymore. It's not a teacher ed program, and then you do the TPA or whatever, and then you enter the teaching profession in that linear sense. It's so complicated where like different districts and different programs have just variations. And so I do agree with, and most of the notes, I think most of the groups agree with the idea of a credential candidate. If we look at the notes, like we all agree with that because we know that that's appropriate for the TPA itself.
That's it. That's
Yeah.
all we're talking about.
Yeah.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
just the
Yes,
TPA.
exactly
We're not
right.
talking
Yeah.
about what we're doing in the state. We're not talking about anything with
Mhm.
that, this assessment. That's all.
Suggestion for the general working definition is to change beginning teachers, or what's appropriate for beginning teachers, to appropriate for credential candidates.
Mhm.
Yes, okay.
Yep.
So then our first attribute of a credential candidate would be what? I know
Right.
I was almost gonna say beginning teacher.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what-
Yeah. Well, see, I know that's the conversation I actually want us to be having, although what we just did, like, actually unpacked
Yeah.
a whole bunch.
Right.
So then what happens is, and this is why I wanted to be in this group. So,
So we're taking this out for working definition for appropriate credential candidate, we're using that language moving forward for the discussion. So we're looking for attributes. So what is,
yeah.
so is it someone, I mean, the first one should be somebody like enrolled in like a teacher prepper, yeah, accredited like teacher preparation program. I think there needs to be like some, I guess, basics in there. Right, because even your resident, I don't know why I'm saying your residency. Even a resident, the teacher or a teacher in residence or an intern or something like that. Yes, would still be enrolled in a accredited, yeah.
But some are already done with their.
Well, I think that
And
that
they're
whold
just
thing is
waiting
beside
for
the, like,
the
hang on a second, so.
So they're still a candidate for their credential.
Okay, working,
but
okay, so
not-
working as a, so.
Yeah, got it.
Yeah.
So,
So do we need to separate those two then? Like one that's, because you
We're
bring
talking about the assessment, so.
well, I just pulled up
Yeah.
some information on how a beginning teacher is defined.
Yeah, thank you. I
And
wanted to
currently,
do that.
the state identifies a beginning teacher,
Yeah.
an entry-level teacher,
Mhm.
beginning teacher who has recently completed their teaching
There
credential
you go.
and is beginning their full-time teaching career.
Correct, and that's not what
That
that is
is-
assessing.
Yeah, this
That is the
needs to
step
change.
before this.
Right. So this,
This-
that's the whole point.
that
So if
is
that
what's
beginning
our
teacher.
Yes.
See?
Yeah.
There's the overlap, right?
Oh, no.
No, there are people, there are individuals
But they
who
don't
are
have-
in the overlap, meaning
But
they
they don't
haven't.
hold the
Right, but they're
credential
not-
yet.
For sure.
They're getting to like, so that program is how it should be done everywhere,
Mhm.
but they shouldn't be responsible for already knowing something that they haven't experienced yet.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Do you understand? It's like a
Or
learn by
assessed on
doing.
Something that they haven't.
It's like being
been-
assessed for knowing your multiplication tables before you've been taught them. Like
Yeah.
as you're learning them,
Yeah.
like being like you're allowed to experience a lesson and learn it before you're being assessed on it, right? And that's the whole thing. It's like let them experience the learning before they're assessed on it. So if you say, I'm gonna assess you on being a beginning teacher before you've actually gotten to experience being a beginning teacher, that's not right,
Right.
you know?
But then some people are like, but I've been teaching for 12 years but I don't have a credential yet.
Except that, yeah, you know, it's like, let yourself, you know, like, yeah,
Mhm.
exactly.
I mean, I think to make it easier, it's gonna be this, taking away the beginning teacher completely.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Because,
Yeah, if the state defines beginning teacher as that,
Uh-huh.
then like they shouldn't be.
Held to the same regard as someone who already holds a
Yeah.
credential.
So just doing some wordsmithing, and I know we're told not to get
Yeah.
caught up on the wordsmithing, just
Yeah.
so I can have what we're moving forward with the general definition. A beginning teacher It's defined as a credential candidate who is currently in or has recently completed a teacher credentialing program and is beginning their full-time teaching career. Does
Say it
that
again.
sound-
No,
wouldn't-
no, a beginning teacher is exactly what you read. You
Yeah,
read
I
their
say-
definition. The beginning
Entry-level
teacher,
teacher
the
is a new
beginning
teacher who
teacher
recently
definition
completed their-
is the state's definition. We
Mhm.
don't get to write that. That's
Mhm.
them. But the appropriate for beginning teachers for the purpose of the RDI TPA, if it's happening during the credential program, then it needs to say credential candidate.
Mhm.
That's all. And we define that.
Correct.
Because
The state has already
happen after
defined
the program is over. It happens like, yeah.
So I think what you had read, Devin, up until the end where you threw in the beginning
Yeah.
teacher thing, was stop it between there.
Yeah.
If everybody is in consensus
So
with
beginning
that.
teacher is a credential candidate.
No.
No, no. Okay, no.
A
So,
lot of stuff, so I'm just trying to clarify.
So what it is the state of California defines a beginning teacher as
Blah,
quote.
blah, blah. Yeah.
Yes. So for the purpose of.
No,
That's what we said.
No.
Credential
No,
candidate.
The beginning,
what you
the state
read,
of
when you said
California's
the-
definition is
Yeah,
the
what
beginning
is the state of
teacher.
California's
We
definition
are
of beginning
defining
teacher?
the credential candidate.
We're defining credential candidate.
Yes, but we are
But we
holding California's beginning teacher definition true, and then adjusting the
We're
credential
adjusting this
candidate
document.
for
So,
TPA assessment.
We're
only.
basically saying, we're not gonna use the words beginning teacher at all, we're gonna change this,
Right, yeah.
because it's not appropriate for the ed TPA, because of how the state defines beginning
trying
teacher.
to.
Yeah, so-
I'm at least trying to get a wording.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So, yes, the situation is you found the definition of the state of California beginning teacher, and it doesn't match this,
Mhm.
right? So we're
Mhm.
saying like, if the state defines it that way, then we're not gonna use it here, because it doesn't belong here, right? They define it as somebody who's already in the field.
Mhm.
And this is an assessment for people before they're technically in the field in that way. So we want to change the phrase to credential candidates. Like, because it's saying that it's assuming that they've already passed the TPA.
Right, and there's instances like in this written public comments where it's like, I graduated in 2022 and I'm still not working as a teacher because I haven't passed the Cal TPA.
Right.
So there are people who can have finished,
Mhm.
but since they haven't passed that TPA, then they are not credential holders
Right.
and cannot
Technically, yeah.
begin teaching.
Yeah, and so basically it's like, yeah, so we're basically making the point that like, you shouldn't be saying this here because it's like, yeah. And so, okay, but that like after that distinction, it's like, okay, so what is the working definition that's appropriate for a credential candidate? So if we're going to make this assessment that appropriate for credential candidates, what are the attributes that make it appropriate for credential candidates? That's the question.
It should be reflective of what the TPEs are and scaffolded towards that.
Reflective.
Because if the TPEs are what we're holding our beginning teachers to, then our credential candidates should be moving towards what the TPEs dictate we should be as beginning teachers.
Mhm.
But the TPE currently has not much connection with the TPEs, right? It's like a cycle of students and observations and things like that, but
So clarify that. So the TPEs that are embedded in our course syllabi at a preparation program are.
Yeah, so they should be reflective and aligned
Sure.
to
Right.
TPEs
But
and
they're
scaffolded.
not,
For sure, but
but it's
yeah.
not completely in the TPAs.
Right.
okay.
So our coursework is aligned to TPEs, but the
Right.
TPA is not aligned to the
Right,
TPEs.
exactly.
And
Does that make sense?
yeah, and can you
That's the whole reason I joined the work group.
Exactly.
So please elaborate on that. If we have this TPA
Uh-huh.
and it is not in line with the TPEs, then what are we actually assessing on the TPA?
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
Garbage.
So our TPA, which is why everyone's like, why do any of this? If I'm working towards being an exemplary teacher on the TPEs, then why isn't my TPA reflective of what my expectations are?
Okay, and so within that should be,
So why
all
don't,
that stuff is gold for like attributes. then,
yep, so
right?
why don't we,
Exactly,
why don't we
yeah.
call it
That's attribute number one.
Yeah,
TPA should be reflective of the TPEs.
Yeah.
Right. Yes.
reflective of, aligned, and also scaffolded towards
Yes.
the TPEs.
Yes.
That would be the developmental.
And that's what beginning teachers get as the
And formative
TPEs,
as
right?
well.
Yeah.
The
Yes.
TPEs are already scaffolded.
Bring that one up, that everybody's favorite word.
Yeah.
That attribute should be formative in nature.
Is like, we will let the formative group
They can do
They're for-
and unpack that word. And I, as the
beginning teacher.
professor of development, will insert the word developmental. Because I really think like when we're talking scaffolding and we're talking about like, when we're talking about credential candidates and then beginning teachers and we're talking about appropriate, we are talking about development, right? And we're talking about like a continuous growth kind of a thing. And so I think it is more appropriate to start thinking about teachers in the way that we think about our students, and we're thinking about their development too. So if you want to reframe the way we think about formative, like why don't we just, instead of getting hung up on the
So,
inner workings of formative, like
Mhm.
why don't we just start thinking about like development? So like formative is like, developmental, like, yeah, the progression of like.
Well, from what I remember, and it's not on here, but from what I remember from the TPEs, isn't there some sort of like developing, emerging,
They're all
advanced or something like that? And I don't have that on here from the CTC. It's just
There's
like
also
listed,
things
but
missing in the TPEs. and
There
I would
are-
love to get on a working group. for
and
it.
on the
So-
CTC, they don't have the 7th TPE either.
Can we adjust this to like scaffold so the TPEs can join this too?
Oh,
You know what I mean?
yeah.
'Cause there are a couple of missing
groups.
There are a couple of missing pieces. The TPEs catch up to us.
But I feel like the TPA should mirror the TPE's scaffolded approach.
Correct.
So that that same system continues into
Correct.
beginning teacher induction. Yeah, and the
Yes.
TPEs are just a way to develop your teaching ability,
Correct.
right? So
Because-
to
That's what we're
what we already have
It's
these
like
things.
because we're because in our programs we're teaching.
can I ask a question about the TPA again, just to
Yeah.
follow up? I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
And of all the 3 TPAs that we offer between Fresno and then the Cal and the Ed, none of them are in your,
Well, not in the
Assumption.
way that actually I don't know exactly
yeah, because I don't
But,
either, so that's why I'm asking the question, yeah.
how reflective of it
Yeah.
is, but
Yes.
what I do know is that nowhere in the language does it say I'm referring to TPE3 when I am blah 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 blah. You do that in your reflection. Well, from what I remember from Kappa, I don't know what it is from TPA, but you put that in your reflection as an individual saying, according to TPE, my project on blah blah blah. But other than that, it's not directly tied to what the TPEs are working towards.
So I can probably clarify that.
Protecting it, save my life.
So I think the TPAs right now
Mhm.
may not be clearly naturally aligned to TPEs, but it's generally assumed that the things that are required in the TPA have already been covered within the TPEs, even though, so for example, creating and maintain a positive environment.
Yeah.
That's TPE number 2, and it's a component of the TPA as well, although it doesn't specifically say this is TPE number 2.
Right.
And so I think in that aspect, there is some consistency,
Okay.
but it's not clearly connected to or aligned to what those
Okay.
TPEs are saying.
Yeah, that word clearly then, so that, or something that's,
So as one of the attributes.
Yeah, 'cause-
clearly, like, because she was using the word developmental, so maybe something clearly developmental linked to TPA,
Well-
something like this.
Get internet access and spelling it all.
No, I'm on my mobile device.
I am on my mobile device. I can't even get it there. I have Verizon.
So for attribute number 1, I put
Yeah.
the TPAs should be reflective of,
Yes.
aligned to, and scaffolded with
Okay.
the TPEs.
Okay, so that
Is that
probably.
too much, or should we break those out?
Say it one more time.
The TPAs should be reflective of, aligned to, and scaffolded with the TPEs.
Okay, so
I think it's a good start.
well,
Well, I mean, it's 3 attributes in one attribute is what
It
you're
is.
putting there, yeah.
and also are like, okay, so reflective of is like, then
Yeah, there's some brand new markers they're very proud of.
it's like, okay, so it's like match, reflective of is matching.
Is our working definition already?
And then aligned to is like,
Okay.
like what's the difference?
A beginning teacher is a credential candidate.
Okay. Aligned and
Beginning teacher.
reflective.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm
You gotta.
Devin, that's
That's-
cool.
No,
I'm
I know I'm gonna keep going back to that. I'm gonna.
That's not even, that's a magnet.
No way to look anything up because nothing of mine works in this building.
I think it's gonna be hard to.
What's the difference?
We'll go ask for
Oh my God. Please.
Well, you were saying,
I don't think.
you know that.
I'll be back.
I don't think a lot of other
Okay.
folks don't know that, but the alignment, right, with like what you do in the TPEs, supposed to take you to the TPAs. Because I heard that too last time from Tina, who said the same thing that Devin said, right, was like, no, the TPEs are supposed to maybe that connection,
Yes.
whatever it is that people, like, we need to be like, it clearly connects or.
And then it
Or what?
varies based on the IH or whatever institute that they're going to.
Yeah.
Then the way that it's connected or the way that it's
Yeah.
implemented or talked about. Oh, is that an eraser right there?
Is that
No, that's
slow?
No.
Okay. All
I'm
right,
gonna get you-
so here's the deal. So to, you know, TPE 6, we got developing as a professional educator, right? And so if we're talking about appropriate for beginner.
Devin, do you want to read the attribute 1 and then I'll just write the attributes so that way they.
Attribute 1, the TPAs should be reflective of the TPEs. I just pulled out the other two, so I mean, pretty
Okay,
much working in one.
Yeah, I think.
can somebody look up the definition difference between reflective and aligned? Like what's really different about reflective and aligned? Like, not in our heads, but like actually, like what's, like reflective is like a mirror image and aligned is like, but like, is there, or it's, like, what's
If I just put a mirror
different
in there.
about it?
I would take out reflective, to be honest, because we're talking about the actual TPAs, right, as assessments, and they should just be aligned.
Reflective means to think through, while align means to be in alignment, in sync with.
But you're never supposed to use the term of like the term that you're defining, the definition of this.
So,
Yeah,
wait.
but reflective, I like reflective,
If you
so.
say, okay, so if you say.
Are reflective of the, or the TPA.
should be
Aligned
aligned with the TPEs.
But.
Should be,
Is
because
it-
the,
Okay.
and I just typed down what was,
Yeah.
I just typed down some specific things that were stated.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that were stated was the TPE should be reflective of, I mean, the TPAs should be reflective of TPEs. Someone else.
Reflective means I
stated
can see myself.
TPAs
Right.
should
What I'm
be
doing.
aligned to
Correct.
Yes.
TPEs,
And then,
and someone
if you're,
said TPE should be
aligned and
scaffolded.
reflective are so close, it's like, do you feel like they're different enough that we can do
I
both?
feel like it's the most, yeah, I think like a reflective is more like, it's supposed to be like, it's supposed to, the TPA is supposed to be this holistic like approach to learning, to putting everything together, this, even though it says formative, we all know it's a summative, this program that we're coming through. Reflective then makes me think that I'm seeing myself of all the work that I've done in my 18 months of my program. I'm seeing that in the assessment.
Mhm.
Aligned feels like that should be the basic of everything. Like if I'm giving a test in my
Right.
class and it's not aligned to what I'm
Your
teaching,
goal
Right.
is,
that-
right.
yeah, that's like,
Pointless.
so why don't we do aligned? Because that's like a basic
Yeah.
thing, but then
Yeah.
reflective could also be, I think, because it should be more of a
Yeah, okay.
holistic kind of thing.
As long as, okay, I just wanna make sure that there's a good reason for both and I like that reason, okay.
Yeah.
And TPAs are aligned.
I was taking out the should be. No, they are.
They are, yeah, no should be.
The attribute
Yeah.
is they are.
What would our professors say if we kept using should be?
Yeah.
What would I tell my students, yeah.
Okay, and then reflective as
Yeah,
well.
TVs are reflective.
And you could even add holistically or something in there too, if you wanna drive that point home.
Yes, holistically reflective. Oh, man.
What does holistically mean?
Oh.
That means like, it means like, you know, when you're.
No, I know.
No, okay.
I'm assuming somebody's gonna be like, well, let's define holistically.
Yeah, I mean, educators love holistic
That's so loose and like amorphous.
Yeah, I know.
Don't want to get too
Yes.
wordy to the point where it
Yeah, that's-
becomes even more confusing to the actual candidate.
Also, it's just us trying to like describe something to bring back. to
Right,
them.
because I just look at the TP A's now.
Yeah.
And a lot of the wording are candidates who are completing them have no clue what they're asking for. It's like, okay, you have some, and so I don't want to get to that point where we're just throwing in words to sound good, but losing the meaning of
Yeah.
what we're trying to say.
I agree with that.
Were you gonna say something else?
Yeah, I mean, just caution over the reflective, because again, according to what I heard from last time and Devin, it seems like they're supposed to be reflective.
Well, then you
Or
can.
I think they are generally, they're just not specifically
Yeah, and I also.
or explicitly identified.
I almost want to say adding explicitly or
Explicit down.
specifically next to align too. So it's just like for the sake of communicating to the group, like these two things are important. Like they're either explicitly
Exclusively
or
aligned to the
specifically or
TPAs.
explicitly aligned, and then they're also holistically reflective. So like these two things where you're just like, it's like overall, like we can see it, and then also specifically we can see it. Like, I don't know, like these are both important things and they're worth discussing with the group, Like,
But I wanna caution from explicitly to the aligned to the TPEs, because I do think there's value in the observations and all of those types
Yeah.
of things, and I worry if then it's explicitly aligned to the TPEs, then then it can get a little
it's just
fuzzy.
like, I want whoever is designing the TPA to be responsible for having their little learning outcomes and being like, yes, it connects to the TPE. This is TPE 6.2. Like when they are designing the TPA, like I want them to be responsible for that. And also I want them to be like, overall, yes, this looks like the TPEs in spirits.
Yeah. So then specifically would be a better word than
Yeah,
explicitly?
say specifically.
Yeah, so I just, so I don't know, like, I mean, I don't know how else to say that right now, but that's sort of what I'm imagining.
Clearly aligned. Obviously aligned.
Yes.
Then we can just say aligned.
Right.
Okay, and so then there's this piece of like the idea of like that it's like we're avoiding the F word, the formative word, but we're trying to insert something developmental like scaffolding or like something that signals like embedded language that signals, or if it could be clear, that's like the credential candidate is developing. And so like the idea that it's like appropriate for beginning teachers, the whole point of that is like that it's this embedded
The
attribute.
whole point of the TPA.
Yeah, it's,
How do you see the CPA
I don't know.
communicating that developmental piece?
Yeah,
I
so
think
how
that's
does,
part of the
that's.
whole purpose of our work group.
Yes,
also.
exactly. So
Yeah.
that's what we need to
I
talk
don't know if
about.
we can pull that out and make that an attribute. If
Well,
that's
that's-
kind of a charge of the
So
whole.
I'm wondering if, well, that's the charge of book one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and we could,
That's the attribute. So what are the attributes? Like basically they're expecting us to come back in with the answer to that.
Mhm.
So we've been concerning ourselves with these other things, which are great, but also like I think we can find them in the TPEs. If we look at the TPEs, like specifically, like, and kind of fool around in there a little bit, like.
So then the TPA, should it be and maybe Devin, maybe you can speak to this because you do the TPA work at Dominguez Hills, right? Like, is it because it's been a long time since I took my TPA. Is it, and I don't remember it being this, but is it a scaffolded like assessment in because there's 2 cycles? Is it a
Scaffolded in
scaffolded
what sense?
in that you're building, right? In that you are. I'm thinking of a scaffolded thing is that I'm doing TPA, the first cycle, TPA 1, whatever it is, and then I have this knowledge, and then my instructor in my program is giving me the +1, right? That I'm the student, and then here's the instructor, and then I'm going to
That.
no, okay. So then maybe if that's what can you have an assessment then that is obviously not formative in nature, this is summative and high stakes. Can it be scaffolded? Can you do that?
Well, and that goes back to
Mhm.
what is a formative assessment.
Yes.
So it would have to be something to the effect of, okay, two cycles, cycle 1 is an automatic pass, it's not graded, you just kind of get feedback almost like a student teacher, being observed by a mentor. And then you're correcting any errors or addressing any weak areas in your teaching ability, and then implementing those in cycle 2. That would be more of a scaffolded approach, but it's not like that at all.
So then does that need, do we believe that that should be an attribute in our working definition, that it should be scaffolded, that it should be?
Well, personally, me, I don't know, but I would go either way. It wouldn't make one difference. I mean, looking at it now, because we're in the heat of it, I have 5 different classes and we're all going through the TPAs right now. And just getting feedback from them, from previous students, current teachers who passed the TPA, all that, and just trying to formulate some approach for this work group and use some of that information to positively contribute to this work group. I think the TPA itself is a fairly decent assessment because it's the closest authentic assessment that a teacher is going to go through in a program. It's not a true false, it's not a multiple choice, it's not a short answer. It is, this is what you're expected to do. I think the errors, from my experience, all lie within assessment, the assessor. I think all errors, all problems are assessor related. Because I mean, it's clearly mapped out, and it just boggles me. And I'm going off on a tangent. It just boggles me. People cannot pass it if they just follow the directions.
Yeah.
Because in the assessment guide, the directions are clearly laid out, and so kind of backing track. I don't know how it could be scaffolded in that sense. Back to attribute.
Assessment.
Yeah, so that's why I'm asking the question. I don't know that it can be without a reworking of the entire.
Well, it can be scaffolded in that it's not just a free for all, like there are supports built in to the assessment in so much as like, it's not just like, you know what I mean? Like
Go in and take the test and then be done.
yeah, like it like in so much as there are pieces built in to support you in the assessment itself, that could be considered a scaffold, so it's like, that you're not just left to let her rip, you know what I mean? Like that's a scaffold, so the idea that you are tasked as the assessor or the designer of the assessment to create supports within that assessment would be scaffolded.
So that means there should be,
And that you would
I mean,
do that.
there should be within the program, within the credential program,
Support.
specific, I don't
Yeah.
hate this, supports
Support, not specific.
that assist the candidate, yeah.
Yeah.
So then,
And using the word scaffolded implies developmental, which it suggests a whole I don't know, it just suggests a bunch of things.
so is there anything in all of that would be an attribute then that we could place in here? Or worthy of being an attribute that we could place, or even fit, be appropriate to fit a scaffolded experience or something that is required of the teacher preparation program?
When you say attribute, what are we talking about?
Yeah.
Like, can you give me an example? Is that
To me, attribute is like a part of the definition, right?
is scaffolded not an attribute? If we say like appropriate for credential candidates, it is scaffolded, it is it is is that what we're saying?
Yes.
Is the word scaffolded an attribute?
I would think so, yeah.
Like in itself, like a bullet point?
The word scaffolded makes me nervous for everyone needs a scaffolded and like what levels of support.
I look at scaffolded as the basic I+1 model, the student and the teacher, the student in the classroom, whatever.
Scaffolded,
Yeah.
the term from a teacher's perspective, in that you're building
Yeah.
these knowledge blocks or basis
Yeah.
for something bigger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That can get fuzzy.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how to.
Well, and you said cycle 1 is just everybody passes, right?
No, I said in
Oh.
order to make it scaffolded, that's how it should be structured, but no, that's not.
Okay, so is there a way to,
Sentence
to do that?
Again, the larger sentence, so when they say blah, blah, blah is appropriate.
Okay,
Yeah,
just,
that would be a recommendation.
and I'm just leaning on you a lot, Devin, because this is what you're doing over there, yeah, so. This is the teacher.
Not just the teacher.
I don't know if even sentencing.
And I was also, while we're looking through this, is there anything did anybody see anything in these notes previously that should be pulled out as attributes? Because we have these 3 pages worth of notes from these other groups that we worked on. that could quite possibly be attributes that could be pulled out.
Years of support.
Yeah, see, tiers of support is like a scaffolding kind of thing, right? Or even in work group 4 or something about understanding that we see potential for growth and success. Again, growth you have to have,
Yeah.
you know. I don't want to say growth mindset, or yet, we're not.
But I think
But yes, but something, yeah.
Potential for growth that sounds out for my work group, because we talked about that a lot, meaning the expectations on a teacher candidate or credential candidate. Was that idea of potential for growth. So it wasn't any sort of, and that was difficult to do, right? It's gonna be difficult to sort of do that, but that's something that stood out. It doesn't have to be an attribute, just something to think about as we're thinking about scaffolding, developmental, this idea of like reasonable, appropriate expectations for a credential candidate, but the potential for growth, like this person has.
Levels of help. I think like
Yeah.
tiers of support / scaffolded or scaffolding, like those both of those things. It's like when we start adding that language together after just like bullet point and just put those words, just because he said don't wordsmith, but just put those words together in a jumble and then send it back. It's like we're talking about those kinds of things. Like
My initial notes when I first read through this was, if we go to page 3 or group 4 notes, what are the attributes of performance assessment that would make it more appropriate for beginning teachers? I put in those, like having this idea of tiers and having a cycle of practice,
That's right.
reflection, observation.
that was the other thing that I got excited about is not gonna go.
Videoing and like those attributes of the TPA are of value, I think. The having the cycles and going through repeating those ideas of what the focus student might need and blah, blah, blah. But still having observations, all of the feedback was the best part of feedback was actual conversations with mentors and observations. So I think those should be within the tiers of what the TPA includes.
And I really love that too, right here in that same thing was you have mentors helping you and providing you feedback along the way. Because that goes back to our formative discussions last time, but I think that is a scaffolded approach.
Agreed.
So if you wanted to.
Hang on. So wait a minute. So I got all excited a little while ago because I was thinking the same thing. I was like, the 2 words that popped out were like the entire family of words right here. And then the second family of words had to do with a reflective practice and a reflective cycle. And so like that, so I don't think we have to like I just think like if we get our categories and then we fiddle with it, like
Agreed.
we're at, like so and then
About 20 more minutes probably.
Yeah. Practice / cycle, because these are things that are cycle. These are things that are cycle. That are. These are related, right? So this is like this is the what, or this is the what, and this is the how. And so it's like this, and they are ongoing and they are developmental, and you do them forever, and they are continuous, and they have to do with growth, right? So it's like that is the growth that keeps going, right? And so and they are reflected in the TPEs, right? And they are something that you can assess, right? So.
Sorry to interrupt. The group wanted till 2:45. Is that okay for you all as well?
Yeah, we were thinking that we'd have 20 minutes, but that'd be like 15 minutes then.
Do you need more than that?
I think we're good. 15 minutes. That's great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great.
Thanks. Yeah, I thought I was keeping an eye on the time. I thought we had until. But yeah, we're all running this. We're the Burbank crew that runs the.
But yeah, that
Put reflective practice / cycle with it.
like developing your reflective process. That's supposed to be process, like the whole, like the learning cycle, like the process, you're developing your reflective process as a teacher. So like the whole process of like reflection, like about your work and your practice. So, you know, when you teach and you think about what you've done and your whole learning cycle, like whole cycle of learning, or like one of those things, like when you think about what you've done and you either talk about it with a mentor or you think about how it went, and then you decisions about what you would like to do next time, and then you move forward. Like the thing that we do as
That's already part of the TPA, so what are we?
So what's different about that is not different necessarily, but that's the thing, that's the attribute that like, that's something that can stay for a beginning teacher. So that part is something that is.
That is an
developmental.
attribute
That's
of
an
the
attribute of
TPA.
that's an attribute of the TPA that does align with the TPEs and also is one of a few, like that piece is developmental and it does, that is reflective of something that is, something that can be like scaffolded and developmental and can keep going,
What is
so.
this cycle? What do you-
Those are just words from
Oh,
here,
okay.
like there were different, those were like all these different words used to describe the same kind of process. I just, they just came from here. So I basically took all the different ways of saying, I didn't land on, I didn't want to.
No, it's okay, I was just curious, I just.
Yes.
So is the continuous cycle of learning and improvement, the CCLI, is this something that is,
Four.
is this in the TPA, are you saying, right now?
Continuous cycle?
This is
Well,
what, I mean, they came up with their own acronym, CCLIs, continuous cycle of learning and improvement. I feel like, is this something that is already?
Oh, I don't like
I
that.
know,
That's
I-
different. That's totally
No,
different.
I
think-
That's run
So,
before.
so the TPA was structured to follow this, what they call instructional cycle.
Yeah.
Planning,
Yes,
teaching, assessing,
Yeah.
reflecting,
yes,
applying.
yes.
But for kind of a longitudinal type of
Yes.
Right.
supportive approach, no,
Right.
it does not have any of that
But
element.
keeping that attribute and
Right.
mirroring it to the TPEs
Yes, that's what I'm
would
talking
be a
Yeah.
better attribute for the
Right.
TPA in general.
Right, right, exactly, exactly.
You did it.
Write it down.
Okay, let me
Yeah, so, yeah, no, the capital letters on CCLI are,
Oh, okay. So no. Yeah.
250.
Oh, 250, okay. So we have till 250.
250, you got an extra 5 minutes.
All right, thank you.
yeah.
Okay, well,
So
I think for now, for this, we have said what is appropriate for beginning teachers is that we notice that credential candidates are not beginning teachers,
Mhm.
but are those who are going to earn their credential using the TPAs that are aligned with the TPEs and following the same cycle of practice that the TPA already implements, but is reflective of the TPEs.
Right, and that should
That
be-
are
and to
designed
clarify,
for the
that's
beginning
through
teachers.
the lens of the TPA, they're not
Correct.
beginning teachers, and
In order
using
to-
the definition of the state of California of
Of
beginning
beginning
teachers, right? So not,
think-
that's the thing.
I think that's good. I think that's reflective of what the feedback was, is that TPAs are trash because it's not relevant to what they're doing, but now it will be if it's reflective of the TPEs,
depending on which study you read.
depending on which one you're.
Because if you read the CPC one, it was trash, but if you read the, whatever, the independent learning group or whatever it was, then it was an amazing thing. Yeah. So,
I'm gonna go back.
Who was in that group?
I don't know, I'm hoping that they give us a little clarification on that one.
Yeah, one, right?
Because they said like most teachers felt like this was, you know, like.
Right.
Teachers
I
connected
also
to the folks who-
thought it was interesting, and I didn't know this, that as of in December 2023, the CTC decided to offer a secondary passing standard in which candidates who score
Yeah.
just below
That point.
can then
Yeah.
use their coursework to waive it. Then why not just do that?
Yeah, Why do we even have
Why do we
it?
even have TPA
You'd
then?
be surprised how many candidates would choose to just resubmit their TPA rather than take that secondary option.
What
And-
entails the secondary
Yeah, it
option?
sounds-
It's
It sounds-
unique to each institution.
Yep.
So
Oh,
CTC has
it's
left
not
it up
just
to
like,
us.
It's my coursework, but I can't pass this test.
So they have some clear criteria. Number one, you have to be what they considered enrolled in a program. And so what we've done was we offered through our continuing education, because a lot of our candidates were finished.
They're done.
They're done, so they didn't have,
That's it.
right. And so we were like, why, how was that? So anyway, because I asked, so you offer a course
Uh-huh.
to say.
So
that
now
there's
they have to
some-
pay extra.
Now, Long Beach says they're using the definition of program completer.
Hmm.
So they don't even offer a course for them. They said if they haven't officially completed the program, they're still considered a student, whether they completed all the programs. So it's just up to the institution. And then you just have to ask them to provide some type of evidence that addresses however many points on the rubric that they were deficit in. And it's usually 3 or fewer. So the candidate provides a lesson plan. We have them provide a lesson plan. We have them provide a letter or just a statement from their mentor or supervisor, somebody who observed. And it says that I've observed this student doing this.
Well, I think that should be the whole TPA, and then why are we even here?
I feel like, yeah, what's.
Like, why? Because
If you have that option.
Right, and now all those people now are getting delayed in being able to hold a job, an actual
Yep.
paying career salary.
Yep.
They have to pay extra to take the test again, and depending on this institution,
Coursework.
enroll to
Enroll.
get those 3 units, which is probably
It's
not
prohibitively
cheap.
expensive.
And, okay,
Yeah.
so why are we even spending doing this?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's funny because that was a initial response to the pushback of saying, let's eliminate these TPA. And so they kind of, it's like throwing the dog a bone.
Yeah,
Yes.
like, okay, so you have to pay, you have to do it, but if you can't, then there's an option for you to still.
At the end of coursework, if that's the point, why go through all this coursework and pay all this money to the institution if then that's still the same?
And then, yeah, is that someone who is actually a beginning teacher then if they cannot get through the TPA? Like if that's the standard that we're holding, but then they can't, and they can't, and they can't, and they can't, but then they have a secondary option, then.
But it
How-
has to be 3 points or less. So they have to miss the
Yeah.
TPA by 3 points or less. If they miss it by 4 points,
Okay.
then that secondary option doesn't count. They have to.
Oh.
Okay, okay, so there's a threshold in there, yeah, okay. I'm thinking like, back on my experience. Like, it wasn't fun, so it would have been just as something as me turning in to somebody at my program at my university that I know how to do X, Y, and Z. That would have been a lot better than going through the whole process. You know what I mean?
Well, that's what it was. I didn't take the TPAs. I graduated 2008 and that was like right the cutoff. It was like I graduated spring and they implemented them in fall. So I didn't have to take them, but when I did do my credential work, what I remember is I created a binder and each of the tabs was a TPE and I had student work, I had images, I had lesson reflections, like this is TPE 1.
That's like BITSA.
It was
Yeah.
BITSA. And then when I started my first year, I did BITSA all over again. It was like, why are you doing this? But
Yes.
I was able to take that binder with me and actually use it and say, when I went to interviews, like, this is the teacher I am because
Yes.
here I am making this example of all of the TPEs I can meet.
The teacher you're gonna become, because we have just made the,
Correct.
yes, because we just made the distinction.
Definition of that,
I typed it up.
beginning teacher.
But I also noticed this is like intern candidates, 88% passing
Over.
as opposed to pre-service.
Yeah. So
And then
key,
what does that
you know what I
mean for the
mean?
students?
Like, according to
Yes,
you,
that's interns.
you say this, and then you're saying this here, and it doesn't match.
That's exactly, yeah. Because now that person doesn't have a job and they can't drive to
We're
take the
satisfied.
test, or they can't pay for that test
According
because
to
they just spent all their money on
Right,
it.
exactly.
Yeah.
My child loves doing that to
That's
me. They saw, well, then you. Ah.
Mhm. Well, and I think this LPI thing was taking the experiences of the implementers and not as much as the
Doesn't
people who
pass,
take them.
and how often.
I would like some clarification as to the intent of adding both of those,
Pass rate was only
Reports.
40%.
like, why?
And trying
You
to
know,
investigate.
like, why did you give me the
why
CTC
it
one and not
was-
just give me the CTC one? Why did you
There
put in this?
was,
other
there were
one?
several.
I don't even know who this
problems.
group
Number
is.
one was
And maybe that's,
candidates had no
yeah.
idea what the PPA was until they took it.
And is it a
In the
California-based
program.
group
They
or
finished
is it
all
a
their
national
classes.
thing?
It was a huge shock.
Right. We do a lot of.
In addition to
And-
that, they had no support,
And
no
where, and
instruction,
who's funding them
no
and where
direction.
they-
Yeah.
So in that,
Yeah.
we granted the instructors who were responsible
Yeah, so-
for that, they were carrying a set of caution, you know, the CTC has that. appropriate and
Yeah,
appropriate.
I was just interested in how they would have two sets of data. You know what I mean?
The program, absolutely.
Well, then,
It should be.
well,
Here it is.
then.
And that's one of the things we did when,
Well, wait. So that should be an attribute because that would make it appropriate for credential candidates that it's embedded,
so the TPA, we're just saying the TPA
is
should
embedded.
be embedded with.
Embedded course.
Yeah.
Yes, 100%, 100%.
So that's number 5.
Okay, great.
Data embedded.
Yes.
Keep telling me why.
Yes, for sure, 100%.
So the question I'm asking him to tease out if there's more is
Yeah.
why aren't they passing at in your program? Okay, so, go on.
The fear of,
Embedded.
Yes,
this fear of teaching to the test.
Mhm.
yeah, embedded in the
So a
program.
lot of instructors really felt uncomfortable for that, so they just wouldn't provide, they just basically would say, read the
Yes.
instructions and get it done. That was pretty much all it was. It was just struggle with it. And looking at some of the current results as to why some candidates don't pass, they don't follow instructions.
Mhm.
It's obviously clear they did not read the assessment guide, which comes along with the TPA. They just did not follow instructions. That's the bottom line.
Okay. If it were embedded in the program, you could have tiers of support. It could be scaffolded. It could be a reflective practice and you could have cycles. And then if they didn't follow directions, you could catch them.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So then so now
Question.
how is it now?
We have a 98% pass rate. We went from 40% to 90.
How did you
Whoa.
change that?
That's amazing.
How are you standing over them while they, or do you, what do you do? Like,
Well, first of all, first thing I did was ensure that we did just that embedded into the program. So I met with every single faculty member who taught in our credential program. I reviewed the expectations of the TPA. They identified different components of the TPA that they can address in their classes. We revised our lesson plan to kind of align itself with what the TPA lesson plan. So every instructor has a responsibility to include some of the TPA content, introduce it, talk about it, prepare them for it in their courses. So 3 semesters, they're getting TPA support. In addition to that, I offer twice a semester, I offer what I call tackling the TPA workshop. So it's just a workshop that I have and I go over the TPA, I go over both cycles. We go over each prompt. And then in our courses, we have specific instructors designed to teach what we call our seminar courses. Our seminar courses are specific to the TPA. That's all they're responsible for doing. They just go over the TPA prompt by prompt, supporting the candidates, helping them with every single aspect of the TPA. And it just took 2 semesters.
That's what we do for our residents as well. First semester, because we're on 2 semesters, first semester is building capacity and a practice run of what the TPA will be, and then second semester is you're submitting it. So you're doing a first round of like a practice TPA.
so
have, like,
could
the
that
green
work
thread
across
thing.
diverse contexts? So like,
Yeah.
what about like the co-teach model or the internship model? Like, can it be embedded in those kinds of models? Like, as in addition to like a university type model, like, is there any reason why we couldn't have that be
don't-
number 5?
We're a residency, and so that's what they are doing
Okay.
now.
I mean, it's even more doable with a residency,
I
right?
agree, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
But
No, I don't know, what do you think?
No, I mean, I feel like it's here because that's, from our conversation, I don't remember what group y'all were in, but we were talking about that specifically. We're like, right now,
Yeah, it's the way.
preparation programs are given that directive that they're supposed to prepare the candidates for the TPAs.
Yeah.
The problem is
what is
the
it?
alignment
Yeah.
and the embedding and what that looks like.
Yeah.
The
We're
new
so
time.
ready. We're ready. We're like,
Yeah, we have.
we're getting just extra ready now.
You're.
Oh.
The new time is 3, but that's inclusive of a break.
Inclusive of a break.
Okay, cool.
Okay. I could do for
One more piece of information.
I sent you an email. And so there's a slide template. You can just pop it on there and send it back to me.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so,
That last thing we just did.
We're doing that?
well, it's
My computer open, I guess I can do it.
Be speaking to it.
That's, yeah.
Yeah.
Slide and I am not having.
Have the access to.
I'm like, this
Yeah,
is
but-
not fun for me.
I mean,
But
that
have-
will- already there, but yeah, I mean, it's a reiteration.
But
Yeah.
since this is already there, but
Mhm.
with this.
Yes.
It will be much different.
Yeah.
From what this looks like for.
Yeah.
Because it will be more defined on what
Yeah.
Okay,
supports
so,
and transitions from day one to day one.
And the credential program, that in and of itself can be whatever the program is, whether it's an
Yep,
internship or not. And so
exactly.
that's what it's supposed to be though, like, yeah, in theory, but it hasn't translated into the.
Because
Yeah.
then Devin wouldn't be doing his like
Right.
TPA boot camp kind of thing, you know what I mean? Because it would
Or
already.
and I'm
be there.
specifically
Yeah.
saying for like the candidates, right? It's
Yeah.
not clear to them.
Yeah,
Huh?
It's not aligned for them.
Yeah.
And it's not embedded easily for them to identify within their program. It
Yeah.
seems that's what the feedback was.
Yep. Go team.
Yeah, that was fun.
Did it?
That was super fun.
yeah.
This was the right group.
It was. It was all the cool kids.
Yeah, that's Like I always tell, because right, so I teach all my
You need to do a strike.
critical candidates. I say, look around, you guys are the.
I know I put it down here, I just put that.
Uh-huh.
Name change, basically. Okay.
I was with a resident a couple days ago and it was super awkward because I wanted to take photos of them for our website.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm just gonna take pictures of you being a really great teacher. And their like face turned all red and all this. So, but like, yeah, like empowering.
Yes, yeah. You teach history, right? Yeah,
I do, yeah.
yeah, so you understand.
Yeah, the thing is, it's like, from what I understood, this was already supposed to be sort of given to preparation programs.
Mhm.
And my concern is candidates should be able to identify those things easily. If not, then something is missing there.
Yes, and we talked about that in our work group
Right.
last time too, was there seems to be maybe a breakdown
Right.
between
The
the
nuance.
CTC and the teacher prep programs. Like what is, where's the breakdown?
Wow.
All right, well, since it's inclusive of break, I'm gonna take my
I'll
break.
take it.
Yes.